Hey guys, this is Paul Lynch. I'm a anesthesiologist and pain management doctor from Scottsdale, Arizona. Many of you guys followed me this year as I went to New York when the pandemic first hit and worked in the ICU and saw kind of firsthand what the coronavirus could do. As I've come back to Arizona this year, I've tried to stay engaged and continue to teach on a weekly basis. The title of my talk today is, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we're still going to lose 850,000 people from this disease just in the United States. That number might grab you as kind of crazy and you haven't heard that before, but I'm going to walk you through the data and why it's probably going to be that high. I've also asked my buddy Austin Hamilton to come in and interview me today because I think I was teaching some of this coronavirus stuff to my son last night, and I realized that the interactive nature, whenever he had a question, he would ask me, well, what do you mean about this and why is that? And where did you get this number, Dad? And what I did was I slowed down more and I could teach it more to him. And I realized that might be good for the viewers as well to have more of an interactive kind of interview. So I wanted to introduce Austin Hamilton, who's going to ask me a few questions.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity. And what I'd like to do is just walk us through the data. So we've got some stuff here to show the viewers. And where do we start?
Yeah, so let's jump into the data. So I'm going to be kind of sneaking up on this concept of we're going to lose 850,000 people in the United States, and that's such a big number. Let me kind of slowly sneak up on that. Let's start in the world. We have almost 80 million cases now recorded of coronavirus. Now, remember, whenever you see a case number, there's actually a whole lot more cases, and depending on which area you're in, I've been using 3 times. So whatever you see reported, it's probably around 3x right now. So not really 80 million, 250 million people have been infected with the coronavirus in the world so far. That's a pretty incredible number. So far, reported deaths is 1.75 million. Now I'm going to show you from the CDC real quick. I'm going to jump around a little bit. The CDC is showing, they did a study a few months ago where at that time through October 3rd, there were around 200,000 excess deaths in the United States from the coronavirus, but 300,000 excess deaths in total. And so I'm going to put a link to this article, but basically what it shows is for every death that we know about for the coronavirus, there's another 0.5 deaths. So if we say there's 200,000 deaths, there are actually 300,000. And so all the numbers that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to multiply by 1.5, and there's at least 4 articles that I'm going to put a link to below that kind of show why that's true. So if you go back to the world data, I'm just going to scroll down here a little bit. I'm putting all these links below so you can look at this yourself. If you don't believe me, you can dig in. This is the data from yesterday. So yesterday in the United States, we had 683,000 new cases in the world. Remember, you can probably triple that. So around 2 million new cases in one day. And there were 13,000 deaths. Once again, you can multiply that by about 1.5. So the real number is probably around 20,000 people died in the world. Now, there's no reason to believe that the US data is going to be extrapolatable, if that's a word, that you can extrapolate it to the whole world. But for estimates, I would say there's probably more like 20,000 people that died from this pandemic all in. Now, a lot of people, if you follow on social media, will say, well, it's not the virus killing people, it's the lockdowns. There's some truth to that. There's the virus is killing a lot of people, but the effects of the virus are also killing people, and that's where that 50% increase comes from. And so in my space, I'm a pain management doctor. We're seeing more overdoses. We're seeing more suicide. We're seeing more depression. We're seeing more people that die at home of a heart attack because they're afraid to go to the hospital. And so there is truth to that. And so as a doctor, we've got to balance like taking this virus really, really seriously, but also telling people, hey, you still need medical care. And so probably yesterday, it was more like 20,000 dead. What I like about this worldometers.info website is you can source things, you can rank things from top to bottom. You can look at who has the most cases. So here's the United States with 232,000. You can see who has the most deaths. Once again, the United States, this is not really what we want to be leading the world in, but we are 3,400 deaths yesterday. I'm going to do a little bit deeper dive on the United States. So in the United States, we have almost 19 million cases reported. Once again, you can probably triple that, which means maybe 60 million Americans have already got the coronavirus. That's 20%. You know, that concept of herd immunity, once we get to 75 or 80% of people that have either had the virus or been vaccinated, the virus slows down. I mean, you stop it in its tracks. And so probably 60 million Americans have been exposed. It's not nearly enough. And that's why we're going to talk later a little bit about, the vaccine. You asked a question earlier, how many people are dead so far? It's 334,000 that are confirmed coronavirus deaths. I showed you the CDC article showing for every, one, there's another 1.5 or 50% more behind the scenes. So the actual deaths as of right now from the coronavirus, from the overall pandemic, is closing in on 500,000. And that number is going to go to 850 by April 1st. So I'm going to show you that in a minute. If you do a little deeper dive in the United States, yesterday was one of the worst days yet. Every time I do a video, I say this, like, yesterday was the worst day because it just keeps kind of growing. We're hitting that second wave, which is really terrible. So we had 3,400 deaths, 350 in California. On the case side, we had 232,000 cases in one day, 44,000 in California. Over the last couple of months, people have asked me about California, and I've said they've done a pretty good job. And if you look at it per capita, some of their measures are working. Something happened in the last month, and California's completely exploded. I honestly haven't even done a deep dive on what exactly is going on, but California is getting hit really, really hard. And the data, the first time I saw the data, there was like 60,000 cases in a day last week, and we just thought it was like, some aberrancy in the data. And then the next day, 40,000, and then 40,000. So they're hitting like 30 to 50,000 cases every single day right now. And it's kind of scary for my friends in California.
Now, they locked down recently, right?
Yeah.
They had a new stay-at-home order, I believe. When will we kind of see the effects of that helping in California?
Usually 30 days, usually. And so here's what's interesting, and I'm going to show you, we're going to get to projections at the end. Because we're deploying this vaccine widely right now, it's going to help with everything. But typically, once you make a move like you lock down, it takes about 30 days to really see the effect.
Okay.
But we're already coming up in the United States where we're going to be peaking in the next week or two. And that peaking sounds scary, but it's also a good thing because that means it starts to come down. And so I'm going to show you that.
Can you go back up to the recovered number?
Yeah.
So what is recovered? That means somebody who had a confirmed positive case
Yep.
and then got better.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and so what's really weird in the data, and I personally don't talk a whole lot about recovered because it's a tricky number. What it means is 334,000 died, and then there's a bunch of people that are still in the hospital, and we don't know.
Yeah.
And then we say, no, this person definitely got better and got discharged. That number hasn't been tracked very well.
Okay.
And so I focus more on this is how many cases, this is how much dead we have. When people really do a deep dive on death rate, if you just divide like 334,000 by 18 million, our death rate in the United States is a lot. The reported confirmed fatality rate is a lot higher than the actual fatality rate. Because of that, for every case you see, there's 3 or 4 cases behind the scenes you don't know about. And so when people ask me what's the true kill rate of this virus, it's at least 0.5%. It might be as high as 0.7%, but it's not a 1% or 2% like you see if you just do the math.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I am going to jump over to Our World in Data, and I'm going to put this link below. Confirmed cases continue to go up in the world. So the last couple weeks, we've been between 600 and 700,000 cases every day. Of course, you can triple that, so it's more like 2 million a day. In the United States, our confirmed cases just continue to rise. The last, since the beginning of December, we've been over 200,000 almost every day in new cases. I want to talk a little bit about deaths here. It's the interesting part about kind of today's lecture is we really do see the end, the light at the end of the tunnel, but we're going to lose hundreds of thousands of lives in the United States over the next couple of months. And it's because the light at the end of the tunnel is coming in the form of the vaccine. But also right now we're getting hit harder than ever.
Yeah. So you said we're currently around 500,000 deaths in the United States.
Yeah.
We're going to be at about 850,000. And you're saying that's the light at the end of the tunnel.
The 850,000, yeah. So the 850,000 dead is probably going to be the April 1st, 2020 through the April 1st, 2021 total all-in death rate. About 2/3 of that will be coronavirus deaths. I'm going to show that. We'll probably hit 560,000 COVID confirmed deaths, and then another 300,000 on top of that. At least half of which are probably COVID that we did, they just died at home. And then the other half are things like suicide, heart disease, overdose, things like that. So the light at the end of the tunnel is April 1st. Mm-hmm. I did a video last month where I basically said, give me 5 more months or 6 more months. April 1st is our light at the end of the tunnel, and then deaths are going to fall off dramatically. The new data, more and more Americans are comfortable getting vaccinated, which gets me excited. We're going to vaccinate people. 20% of people have already got it on their own. So the light is coming, but when we kind of let the dust settle and we look at what happened, we'll have lost almost 1 million lives due to this pandemic, which is kind of crazy. Like, I'm on social media a lot and I try to teach a lot, and I know you do. and everyone criticized early on, like, oh, this 2.2 million number we see circulating around, it wasn't that far off. Had we done nothing and just lived our lives, it probably would have been 2 million. Even with lockdowns and schools shutting down and no more football and all this, we're still going to lose almost 1 million. We might lose 1 million. Like, I don't know exactly what's going to happen from April to December. It's going to peter out pretty quick, but we're going to continue to have deaths. Like, COVID is going to be on our radar. So by the end of next year, it might be 1 million, but certainly 850 by April 1st. So here's our deaths. We're losing about 2,000 a day right now, and I'll put a link to this so you can kind of see how the year's gone. But we basically had a massive surge in the spring where we got up to about 2,000 deaths, and then a little surge in the summer where we got over 1,000, and now we're going to be probably pushing over 3,000 deaths a day for the next 30 to 45 days in the United States, and that it just racks up 100,000 deaths a month pretty easy. I want to just show hospitalizations. I haven't reported this in the past, but once again, we've had kind of 3 waves this year. In the spring, we had about 60,000 people hospitalized at a time for COVID. Then we hit that same 60,000 number in the summer, and now we are almost double that, or we are double that. 120,000 people hospitalized due to COVID right now. This graph, I think, really hopefully grabs people's attention of how much worse this is than anything we've seen so far this year. This isn't a New York problem anymore or an Italy problem. This is the entire United States is getting hit at the same time, and it's hitting places like South Dakota and North Dakota, and that don't have great hospital systems. All due respect to my Dakotan friends, but it's hitting the entire United States right now. So I want to talk a little bit about testing. I launched my own testing this week, and I did a post on it. I've been complaining for some time we're not testing enough, and I'm basing that on the fact that our percentage positives are above 10% in most states in the United States right now. So the World Health Organization says that your positive rate should be less than 5%. And the reason is, it's almost like if you do an appendectomy, like there should be a certain amount of appendixes that we take out that are actually normal. And that shows that we were being aggressive enough that every time someone's really, really hurting and they have a fever in their right lower quadrant, like we're aggressive to say, we're going to take that appendix out, because if you don't and it ruptures, then the person might die. So it's the same kind of idea that we should be widely testing and saying negative, 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 negative. Okay, that guy's positive. We're going to search. But if everyone you test is positive, that means you're not testing enough. And so the World Health Organization says 5%. We've used 10% in the United States as a measure of when to shut down. Yesterday, our numbers in Arizona were 34% positive. It's just way too high. Wow. And I'm going to show that in a second. But I've been a little concerned. I've been following this testing. We peaked our testing on November 24th, about a month ago. And we were testing about 5.5 people per 1,000. Think of it differently, like 1 in every 200 people got a test. That was pretty good. And then it's just kind of rapidly fallen in the last couple of weeks to where we're down to 3.6 in the last week or so. So I just think our testing facilities are getting overrun. And so we, for example, at Arizona Pain, we acquired 4 machines, and at each of our locations, we're testing. We're testing our employees, we're testing our patients, and we've even opened up to the public that people can come in and get tested. And so I think it's important that we test. I think Arizona specifically, I'm actually going to show you, I'm going to go back.
So I think that's a great point. So with your clinics, I could just walk in, pay cash, get a test within, how long would that take?
It takes 15 minutes. We literally get answers in 15 minutes, and we 84% sensitivity, which means if you have the disease, it's 84% of the time it can tell you. 100% specificity. So if it says you're positive, you are definitely positive. And that's the thing about the rapid test and most tests. They're much more specific. If it says you have it, the only way to say you have it is to detect the virus. And so 84% sensitivity in 15 minutes is pretty good. People debate, well, I could get a test that's more sensitive, but you got to wait 5 days for the results. Right. And by the time you get the results, you've already infected 100 people. I'd rather quickly know you have it and shut it down. And so we've been opening it up. I went back to this Worldometers website because there's all these different rows you can rank. And so I force ranked the United States by tests per million. And Arizona is 7th worst in the United States. That's a little better from last week. Maybe it's my new testing that I opened. But we were 5th worst in the United States, and now we're 7th worst. But the problem is we're 7th worst, but we're in the top 15 or 20% for most cases per capita. You can do that here. You can do total cases. And so we are, I did it the wrong way. Total cases per million. Where are we at? Oh, 22. So we're actually falling on that. So good. Arizona's getting a little bit better. But for testing, we're 7th worst in the United States. So I'm going to go back over. So here's the testing. I'm going to continue to track that number. I'd like to see that get back over 5. And I think everyone should be working together. I want to talk a little bit about excess deaths. I've hit on this a little bit. I've got a lot of questions on social media about, do we really lose 850,000 people? Or is it people that died that would have died anyways? There's a lot of talk about, long-term care facilities and the elderly dying and young people are fine, and just tons of questions. There's a lot of people that truly believe that the coronavirus pandemic's not real and that we're just attributing death. So this is a great way to look at it. I'm going to put a link below, but this is actually, I'm going to teach it here first. This is from the Our World in Data website. This shows the percentage of increase in deaths over the week before. And so we peaked out April 12th with 45% more deaths in that week than what was predicted from the year before. I was actually in New York City on this week. The first weekend that I was in Manhattan, we lost 3,000 people in New York City alone. That was the same amount we lost in 9/11. And so 45% increase. The typical week, and I'm going to show this in a second, you'll lose 50 to 60,000 Americans from all causes. We were losing like 80,000. And so it was a terrible, terrible week. But if you look at it, every single week this year, 30% higher, 40% higher, 31, 25. The best weeks were in mid-June. Remember when we shut everything down and it kind of calmed down? Even in those weeks, we still lost 14% more.
So this is year over year for a given week. It's
a little more nuanced, and I'm going to show you the CDC data in a minute, but it's the predicted amount of deaths based on like the last 20 years on what we've seen.
Okay.
And even in our best week of the year, we had 14% more deaths than expected. 14%, that's a huge number. 45% was our worst week. Now here's where it gets scary. So it went up again in July, 25, 30%, and then it started to come down. And we're getting crushed right now. Now, here's the thing when I'm teaching people about deaths, it takes 8 to 12 weeks to get the data and compile it and understand what's going on. But I think right now, like December 23rd, our deaths are more than that 45%. Based on all the curves, I think we're at like 50 to 60, maybe 70% more deaths right now than predicted. And so we won't be able to fill that curve in for the next 8 to 12 weeks.
So by mid-February or so, we'll start to see this graph go way up.
Yeah. So, I think I talked to you about it on an earlier show. If we go to June and then look back 8 weeks and we have a full year of data, April to April, I think you're going to see that 850,000 number that I talk about. But the way I would say it is you're going to see about 30% more deaths on average for the year throughout the year. And we normally lose about 2.8 million Americans. And so you multiply that 2.8 by about 31.3, you're going to see 800 to 850,000 extra deaths. Mm-hmm. But it's going to take us a while to get the data. But this is what epidemiologists do: is they study it and they predict, and you see where they're going. And then as we get different data points, we change our models. But all the models right now keep saying the same exact thing: we're losing 20, 25, 30% more people every day of the week.
Yep.
And so it's hard for people who are truly looking at the data to question the validity of this. Yeah.
So roughly, you said 2.8 million people die on average per year.
Yeah.
And we're going to have about 30% over that.
Yeah.
So roughly, we'll have just under 4 million deaths in that year-over-year period, April to April.
Yeah, not 4 million. I'll go back and rerun the numbers.
Well, 2.8 times 30%, so about 3.7 or so.
840,000 extra deaths on top of 2.8 million, so maybe 3.65 million or something like that. But it's scary.
That's a lot. That's terrible.
We've never seen anything like it in our lifetimes, and that's the thing that the viewers need to understand. We've never seen anything like this. We've never had, in our lifetimes, an extra almost million people die in a year in the United States. We had the Spanish flu pandemic, which was similar, but that was 1918. That was over 100 years ago. And now we're getting hit again. It's really similar. Mm-hmm. So this is the excess deaths. There's a different way to show it. And you started to ask this question, so thank you. This is every year, the 5 years leading up to 2020. You can see exactly how many people died every single week. And then you see 2020 is this big red line. And this shows how many people died in each week. I mean, it's pretty impressive when you kind of lay it out this way. The black line in the middle, that's the average over 5 years. And then red is 2020. And you can see the worst week when I was in New York City, 78,000 people died in 1 week versus 50,000 in a normal week. I'm going to dig in just a little deeper. I really like this website for the CDC. They kind of go through how many people die in a normal week. And I kind of call this like the wave of death. It looks like an ocean. And so in a typical week in the United States, will go between 50 and 60,000 deaths, and it depends on the time of year. So it's not like maybe this week we have 50 and maybe we have 60. It's very predictable. In the wintertime during flu season, we lose more like 60,000. People are indoors and they're spreading communicable diseases. And in the summertime, it goes down to about 50. And so if you look at from the last 4 years, April 2017 through 2021, there's like this wave of death. And that yellow line that you see is the CDC's prediction of anything above that yellow line would be a statistically significant increase in deaths, meaning that there was something going on. It wasn't random, if that makes sense. So in a day, let's say the CDC says, 52,000 people will die today. It could be 52,005. Someone gets shot. There's 52,006. Someone, doesn't die because the doctor saved them. Okay, it's 52,005. If it goes above that yellow line, then there was a statistically significant event that caused it. And so if you look over the last 4 years, there were only 7 weeks over 4 years. So, call it 4 times 50, 200 weeks. Only 7 times was there a statistically significant increase in deaths that went beyond what the CDC said it should have been. So that happened way back in January 2017 during flu season. It happened a year later, 6 weeks in a row during January.
What happened there?
It was a really bad variant of the flu.
Okay.
And so our average flu deaths, early on, a lot of people argued a lot about this is just like the flu. Our average amount of flu deaths over the last 10 years has been 28,000 per year. Not a huge number, but they mostly cluster between like October and April. And so it adds 2 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 per week. In 2018 flu season, it was a really bad season. We lost like almost 60,000 that year. And so we had 7 or 6 weeks in a row where there was a statistically significant increase in deaths over what would have been predicted because the flu was worse than normal. It was worse than 28,000. And so those weeks have that 28,000 built in plus extra deaths. Okay. And so that was statistically significant. And then we were totally fine in 19. And we had, hundreds of weeks in a row where the CDC got exactly right. This is the predicted number. And saying the CDC got it right is oversimplifying. The model, what it would predict was true, 100 weeks in a row until 2020.
What are we seeing now?
So now we've had 35 weeks in a row of statistically significant increase, and you can just see it just blows up. And I was teaching this to my son last night, and he's like, whoa. Every one of those red dots is a statistically significant increase in the amount of deaths than what would have been predicted over and over and over, summer, spring, fall. And we're seeing, as we showed before, 45% increase in deaths on this 1 week in early April. And then it went down, then it came back up, and now it's getting ready to go through the ceiling. And so this is a nice way to kind of look at it. Anyone who, I've had so many questions about whether it's, are we testing too much, or is the test accurate, or, there's so many people get really obsessed with like debating some of this and how many cases we really have. You can't fudge the numbers on death. People are dying. There are death certificates, there are bodies, and they're adding up this year. And so I'm going to put a link to this so people can kind of dig in a little bit deeper. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about Arizona. I live in Arizona. It's my biggest opportunity to make an impact personally. And so talking to you about it today, Austin, makes it easier because we can kind of look at it together. There's actually a lot of good data on the Arizona website. I'm not super happy with how they lay some of it out, but I wanted to walk the viewers through what happened yesterday. We had 6,000 new cases reported and only 17,000 tests. I say only 17,000. That might sound like a lot to you, but I did the math. That's a 34% positive rate. That's an insane number. That means a lot of people walking around have this virus. It means that your chance of getting it, if you go out, if you go to church this weekend and sit next to someone without a mask, you are putting yourself at risk. And so even though we see the light at the end of the tunnel, we have got to be careful right now. When you see a 34% positive rate, that's just insane to epidemiologists. So 6,000 reported cases. Normally, I would say you can triple that. That's actually 20,000. Not when you have a 34% positive. It might be 10 times higher than that. It might be 60,000 people contracted it yesterday.
We just have no idea.
We have no idea because we're not testing enough.
And where can they get tested?
You can get, it's like a commercial. Honestly, we didn't roll out testing to make money. We rolled out testing to protect our patients and protect our own staff. Like we've been testing our own staff like crazy. Like someone got a cough, test them. Someone sneezed, test them quick.
And
we got the machine.
And your numbers go into this data.
Yeah, our number, we report straight to the health department. Okay. And so we're testing as much as we can. But Arizona's in a bad spot right now. One of the things that I've talked about before, but I want to make sure, since I'm talking to you, that you understand. This 11.7% number that's right on this main box is a total crap number. That is the total. You would hope that was the number like yesterday, because that would be helpful to say, oh, it's 34%. I don't see 34% on here anywhere.
Right.
Or maybe that's the percent positive for this week or this month. But no, we've decided for some reason on this dashboard that everyone looks at, that's the number positive so far to date of all tests. It's really kind of a useless number because I don't really care what percent of people back in April were positive. I care about today. That's how we make decisions. That number's not on here.
10 years from now, as we look back on the data, that'll be a relevant number.
It might be interesting. Yeah, total all in. But it doesn't help us as public health officials, so that's what bothers me. So this 11.7%, you can just ignore that. The number is 34%, which is 6,000 divided by that. It's actually a little bit worse because this includes serology tests, which really aren't helpful. That's saying how many people have antibodies. That doesn't really help you. So it's just the way we report the data is a little bit weird. But the bottom line is we had a really bad day yesterday, and we're going to continue to have bad days for probably the next 30 days, and it's going to start to get better. And I'm going to show you that at the end of this kind of talk on data. Let me click on this next tab. I really love this confirmed COVID-19 cases by day tab. I think we do good. This is called the Epicurve, and it shows how many people were positive on a certain day. What that means is if I test 17,000 people today, I'm going to have to wait 5 days to report that data. And so you're going to see the results next week. But what this does is it goes back and attributes all those tests to the day it was tested. And so this shows that we had this massive spike in June. Everyone remembers that. And then now you can just see we're having this crazy spike, 7,000 or 8,000 cases every day.
So this is kind of normalized. In the past couple months, there have been these ridiculous spikes in the Arizona data.
Right.
And the explanation was they took a few days and reported it on one day.
Right.
This gets rid of all that.
That's exactly right. It gets rid of all the noise. Any of those things where on one day it shows 15,000 cases, this shows you what day it was tested at the lab. And so we're running around 8,000. It's not 10 times on each of these days, but it could be 5 times. We might be really getting 40,000 people every day that get this. It's pretty crazy. And if you think about it, you're going to be infectious for 7 days. If 40,000 people truly get it a day, if I'm right on that, and you're infectious for 7 days, and there's 280,000 people walking around right now that can infect you with coronavirus. That's kind of a scary number, just in Arizona, out of 7 million people. And so I really like this way to look at it. I was showing this to someone last night. People continue to question coronavirus and, here in Arizona. And I wanted to show this. This shows hospitals and how many people are in the hospital. And so if you go back to September, just 90 days ago, we only had about 400 people in the hospital with coronavirus, 400 people-ish. Yesterday, it was 4,000. So we've come from 400,
That's 10 times.
10 times.
I'm not even a doctor.
You knew that right away.
Yeah.
I mean, literally a 10x increase in hospitalized patients. So when you hear nurses and doctors talking about how they're tired and they're overwhelmed and I see some people and they're just like, it's coronavirus hasn't affected me. It's like, good. Well, thank God it hasn't affected you, but it's affecting a lot of people in the United States and Arizona. We've seen a 10-fold increase in hospitalizations due to COVID over the last 90 days. So that's the Arizona data. I've talked a lot about where we're at right now. I want to talk about where we're going, and it's a good message and a bad message. It's good and bad. It's light at the end of the tunnel, but oh my gosh.
Show me the light. Let's
be careful. So let me show you. This is probably my favorite website. I'm going to put a link below. It's covid19.healthdata.org. It's the IHME Consortium. I like that word, consortium. I've been following this since April or May because what I found out pretty early on is these guys are on top of it. They have predicted with incredible accuracy exactly where we're going every single week. And so I've been kind of following, and you can sort it by Arizona or Oklahoma or whatever state you want to look at. And it's basically telling us where we're at and where we're going. And then they give parameters like if people wear more masks, this is what's going to happen. If people don't wear masks, this is what's going to happen. If we roll out the vaccine quicker. And so it's pretty nuanced. So this is the United States of America. It says here right in big, huge numbers, 567,195 COVID-19 deaths by April 1st, 2021. That's the current projections. They have been right almost every step of the way. This has ticked up in the last couple of weeks as we had Thanksgiving holidays and people are just getting tired of this, and I think people are getting lax. If you look at it right now, today, we're at about 326,000. So we're going to get from 326 to 567,000 just over the next 3 months. That means 200,000, 250,000 people are going to die. If you go out to April, you can see this red line is if mandates ease, meaning everyone just stopped taking this seriously. We could lose as many as 700,000, but that's not going to happen. People are taking this seriously. You can see human behavior. Not everyone, but most people, call it 80%, are really taking this seriously. So we're not going to lose 729,000, but we are going to lose 567. And the way, once again, that I got to 850 is you can multiply that by 1.5 based on all the data from the CDC and JAMA. I'm going to put 4, maybe 5 separate articles that justify my position. I'm not going to go into all those articles right now, but it's really going to be 850,000. But why is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Well, let me show you this. This is what gets really exciting. So this is daily deaths, and this shows you today, December 24th. These are averages, so you can't really lose 0.72 people. And so that's an average over the last 7 days. And so today we're at around 2,800 deaths, and we're going to go up and we're going to peak on January 11th. January 11th, at least according to this model right now, and they're pretty accurate, that's going to be the worst day. We're going to lose almost 4,000 people. We'll have a few days where we lose 4,000 people, and that's going to grab people's attention. But we're going to peak on January 11th. That's about 2.5, 3 weeks from now, which means cases are peaking today, and I'll show you that in a second. And then it starts rapidly coming down. So even as we're piling up deaths, we're coming down, and we'll hit 3,000 again by the end of January. And then we're going to come down, and then we're going to hit around 2,000 deaths again by the end of February. And then it's going to come down. And once you get to April 1st, now we're down to 700 people dying a day, which is still a lot of people, and that will continue to peter off throughout the summer. If you look at the vaccine rollout, we're going to probably vaccinate between 15 and 20 million people this month before the end of the year. I'm getting vaccinated.
That's incredible.
Right? What an insane time to be alive. It sucks and it's scary and people are dying, but we've done a good job with this vaccine. We're 2 vaccines now that are incredibly evidence-based. I'm getting vaccinated on Saturday, and we can talk more about that when we're finished with the data here. But it looks like starting as early as January, we're going to be able to vaccinate about 60 million Americans a month.
Wow.
And so 5 months, we get 300 million, we get herd immunity. And so May is going to be a great month. I think April 1st, we're going to be getting back to semi-normal. I just want to show you the infections rate. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so will we see another spike next fall, or will the vaccine kind of help curve that down?
I think it's up to us as Americans and what we do, but I think if we all get vaccinated, if we get 70, 75% compliance, Fauci says we really need 80%. I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's just too many Americans that are fighting it. But if we could get to 70 or 75% of people get vaccinated, plus the people that have already been infected, next fall there will not be another spike. There might be a little blip.
Yeah.
It'll be more like a flu season.
But it's not going to be a hockey stick like we saw.
No. This is going to be, and there's lots of questions long term. Is it going to mutate and then we have to get another vaccine? We don't know all that. What we do know is if 70, 75% of us get vaccinated this year, next fall will be much better on this variation of the virus. So this shows same website, but looking at infections. Now, IHME, they go an extra step of actually estimating how many people are really infected, not the reported number. I love that because that's the way I think. It's not what's reported, but what's real. So they're saying 689,000 people are going to get infected tomorrow. That's triple what we reported earlier, right?
And that's in the world?
This is in the United States.
Oh my gosh.
So they're actually telling you the real estimates. So it's about 3x. So if I say there's 230,000, they triple and say, no, it's 690. And so right here it said their estimate is exactly what I just said. 690,000 people will be infected. And they're saying that the peak is the day after Christmas. Sorry, no, the peak is today. That's pretty incredible. The peak is today, 698,000. So today, Christmas Eve, 2020, according to their model, is the worst day.
Wow.
Now, that's the worst day for infections. And then the deaths will be 2 to 4 weeks later. And that's why I showed you the deaths.
January 11th is what they're modeling.
You got it. So I'm not going to go into all this data, but I just wanted to show you there's a couple other cool things. You can look at mask usage, and it shows that about 74% of Americans are using masks. The goal is 95. So we're short of that, and that 26% of people, you got to get your crap together and start wearing your mask, and because that difference between 74 and 95% is massive in deaths. Like not wearing masks causes deaths, and so we're about 74% on mask usage. You can also look at social distancing. This is super cool. We track cell phone data, and you can see what percent decrease. So the very peak of people kind of staying at home was April. We all remember that. It was just total lockdown. We had about 53% decrease in movement around the United States with even driving your car or going to work or whatever. And today we're at about 24%. So that 24% number is helpful. Honestly, it needs to be more like 40 or 50%. It's like this balance. Like I'm a doctor. I do need to go to work and take care of my patients, and I do. But I don't have to go to a movie. And so it's just like that balance. Like I think we restrict our behavior as much as we can. 24% is probably not where it needs to be. But you can kind of you can dig into some of this on the website if you want. Before I leave it, I just want to show you Arizona, because a lot of people have asked me in my own business and my own coworkers, what's going to happen in Arizona. And so you can pull up Arizona data. Most people don't get too excited about total death rates in Arizona, but we're at about 8,000 right now. We're going to double. We're going to double to 15,000 by April 1st. So whatever we've seen so far this year, it's going to double over the next 90 days. And that's why we talk about it's like the darkest time before the dawn. If you look at daily deaths, it's very similar to what I showed you. We're going to peak on January 11th. If you look at cases, they're saying in Arizona we're going to peak the day after Christmas. And so in the United States, we're peaking today. We're going to peak in Arizona the day after Christmas with about 25,000 actual cases. We may only report 8. You can triple it. And so 25,000 cases. And so you can kind of go through, the Arizona data. And so I guess I would summarize the data, both the United States and the Arizona, to say we can see the end. April 1st is the end, but we still have decisions to make as society, like over the next 90 days, what do we do? I mean, that difference between 850,000 and 750,000, like we can control that. We can control 100,000 deaths by our behavior. And so it's the same story we've been teaching. We socially distance, we wash our hands, we wear masks, and now we get vaccinated.
So it's the end of the bad, right? It's not the end of the virus, it's the end of the bad. And we can control kind of that outcome.
That's right.
April 1st around there being the end of the bad, and then things will really start to flatten.
Yeah, no, after April 1st, I think we're going to start to slowly get back to normal. Looking at all the health experts and stuff, we'll probably have most people who want to get vaccinated by May. So we're probably wearing our masks through about May. And then I think we start to take our masks off in the summer and we start to get back to normal. And, it's going to be an exciting time going into 21 and after that we kind of beat this thing.
Cool. Well, I can't wait. Thanks for that explanation.
Yeah.
All those links will be in the video description below. Something else I wanted to ask you is what's going on with the UK variant of the virus?
Right, yeah. Wow. Right. It's got a lot of people scared. I've probably got 10 questions on it in the last couple of days. So thank you for that. The UK variant is real. So it's called B.1.1.7.
Got it.
Can I say it?
B.1.1.7.
Yeah. And it's real. And it's super interesting to me as a scientist. It's a little scary, but not super scary. And we can kind of get into the nuance. The variation of it. Let me just start off with what mutations mean. It's an important kind of concept. So viruses constantly mutate. And that's not a bad thing for us. We want the virus to mutate. Most of the time, like if you say I have like a mutant child, you don't picture that they're like stronger than everyone else or better or they fly. You're like, oh, your kid's probably messed up, right? And so mutation is usually a bad thing. Usually, every once in a while there's a mutation that's selective and is better, but most of the time it's bad. So when the virus is mutating, it's usually getting less and less weak and or less and less strong. And so we've seen that this year, the virus has actually gotten weaker. We give doctors a lot of credit for learning how to treat it. And there's some truth to that. But the virus itself has probably weakened a little bit as the year's gone on. The virus that we saw in New York in April was a little different than what we saw in October. And so as it's mutated, it's generally got better. This particular strain, they showed, I think it was 34 or 23, I forgot, it doesn't matter, but like 34 separate mutations. But of those, like 10 were on the spike protein. And so think about it as like it made it a little slipperier, a little bit harder to grab by your immune system. And so a couple of things happen. One, it's more transmissible. The data has shown that it's 50 to 70% more likely to be transmitted. So that it's already has a really high R0, this COVID-19, and now it's transmitting even quicker. They also think it's a little bit more severe case. And so That's not been proven, but there's some data out of South Africa showing that there's higher viral loads. And so not only is it transmitting to more people, but they're getting a worse version. There's data to show that it might be more transmissible in children, which really scares people, because one of the reasons COVID-19, has been mitigated a little bit is kids aren't getting it as much and they're not transmitting it. It's not completely true. They definitely get it, but they're getting it less and they're transmitting it to other people less. So all this stuff is like, oh, that's kind of scary. But here's the good news. Based on everything we know right now, it's still going to respond to the vaccine. And so you see a lot of people talking about a vaccine escape is kind of the key word. There's no reason to believe that this is going to escape the vaccine. There's some fear because the spike protein is like 8 or 9 of the mutations, but so far there's no data to show it's going to escape the vaccine. So I think we're okay, but we got to keep our eye on it. And it's one of the reasons the UK is getting really locked down. A lot of countries are afraid.
So do we know for certain that the vaccine will work on it, or we just, based on the data we have available, we think it will?
Yeah, such a good question. So this year, we all have to get really comfortable with the concept, but we don't know. So we don't know. No one's done a vaccine trial with 75,000 people with this version. But this is where you got to kind of trust scientists, and where I go to this IHME website every day because I trust scientists. I'm a doctor and a scientist, and I've learned my whole career these disease states, and I trust the data. The best scientists in the world right now fully believe the vaccine is going to work against it, but we don't 100% know.
Okay.
And the more nuanced answer is, will the virus escape in the future? That's possible.
Yeah.
It's quite possible.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with flu vaccines every year. We need to get a new vaccine every year as it's constantly, mutating. I thought it was really interesting if you look at this UK virus. There's some really good articles. I'm going to actually link to some of these below. But I talked about where did it come from. And one of the theories is that immunocompromised people get COVID-19 and they keep it a long time in their body. And so what happens is the virus is constantly mutating. If you get the virus, you're going to knock it down in 1 or 2 weeks, and it's going to divide in your body, but you're going to kill it so fast that it doesn't spread to someone else. But what if someone has lupus or some, MS or some, immune condition where their body can't fight the virus very well? It might stay in their body for 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
And the whole time it's dividing. And now it's not alive for a week. It's alive for 3 or 4 months in a host body. And it's constantly dividing, and replicating and mutating. And these different versions are coming out of immunocompromised people. So it's kind of scary, but interesting science. So will the virus escape later? Maybe. But we've already shown that we can make a vaccine in 3 or 4 months. 5 or 6 months. And so we could be in a situation where we have to make a vaccine every year. And that might scare people, but it doesn't scare me. We've been doing this every year. As doctors, we get a flu shot every year. So this could be part of our future, but we don't completely know.
Yeah. When you say escape, that means mutate to the point where the vaccine won't work against it?
That's it. So yeah, we use the word vaccine escape, where now we made this vaccine, we put all this time and money in, and it doesn't work anymore. There's no reason to believe at all that's happened with this vaccine, but it could happen going into next year. And so we just got to prepare ourselves mentally for that.
Okay. So tell me about the vaccine.
Yeah.
People just started getting vaccinated within the last week or 2.
Yeah.
Are you going to get vaccinated? Should I get vaccinated?
Yeah.
Who is this good for?
Yeah. So the answer is yes and yes. I wasn't sure I needed to get vaccinated because I already got the virus. But what's kind of been shown to happen is I got the virus way back in April, and over time your antibodies decrease. And so I could get it again. We don't know if it's this year or next year, but I don't want to get it again. And so the recommendation from the CDC is I should get vaccinated. And so I'm going to. I'm a healthcare worker. And so I'm in kind of the first wave. And so I was contacted by Honor Health, and I went on my app on my phone and I got an appointment. It took me 3 minutes, and I'm going to get vaccinated in 2 days. And so I'm pretty excited about that. I'll take a picture as everyone does. It's kind of the
obligatory
cool
selfie.
Yeah, getting a photo of me with my vaccine. I actually had a funny picture from the Breaking Bad scene, and I was going to post it and say this was me getting vaccinated.
Nice.
But I don't know if people will think that's funny. So I'm gonna put a picture up. I'm gonna get vaccinated in 2 days. You should get vaccinated. We should all get vaccinated. There's some people that shouldn't get vaccinated. If you have an EpiPen that you got to carry around every day because you have, anaphylaxis to stuff, maybe you're not the first person to get vaccinated. Some people have had responses, weird responses to this. And I'll get into that in a second, but most people should get vaccinated. Dr. Fauci, who a lot of us really look up to, he says about 80% of Americans need to get vaccinated. Right now, maybe 65% say they're going to, so that's good. We were at 65 in the summer, And then everyone lost faith in that vaccine, like August, September, October. I don't completely understand it. Some of it was political. Some of it was, there was like, one of the trials was stopped. So I don't know, a lot of people lost confidence, and now it's starting to rise again. We're about 65 to 70% that say they will. That's good. And I think we saw the same thing with face masks. Like only like 40% of people were wearing face masks in April and May, and that's gone up to 75%. And so as more people get vaccinated, as I get vaccinated and I don't grow like a third head or second head, people will see it and say, okay, I'll get vaccinated. And so, yeah, we should all get vaccinated. I gave a talk to my own business last week on vaccination, and I just wanted to repeat those points for you.
Yeah.
And feel free to ask me questions about it. But it's 10 points. I'll try to go quickly, but there's 10 things that I said to my own practice. Number one, the data is incredible. And I've covered this before, but 2 separate trials with 75,000 people, not like 10 people. 75,000 people were in 2 trials with Moderna and Pfizer, and they had 95% success. The FDA, when we went through all this, said that we needed 50% success for this to be effective. 50% was the goal.
Wow. What's like an average study success rate? Do you know?
Well, it depends on what vaccine you're looking at. We were looking at like, all the tried and true ones like MMR. I think it's like 90 to 95% successful. But if you look at each of the diseases, and some are only 82% successful and some are 98. But anything over 90 is incredible.
So it's in the same ballpark as tried and true successful vaccines.
Yeah. Even better than a lot of them. And so 95% success is crazy good. Like this, I felt like I was going to cry when I read the studies. Like I was so excited. Like I was waiting and hoping for 50, 60% success. Because think about it. If you vaccinate everyone and you get 50% success, it's like cutting down 50% of the people that could have died from this. That's a huge deal. I'm a doctor and people come to me in pain. And if I tell them I'm going to do this procedure and there's a 50% chance you're going to get better, that's really good in the pain space. For vaccine to come in at 95% is going to be incredible for us. So number one is incredible data are incredibly successful. Efficacious is the word we would use. Number 2, it's incredibly safe. Like 75,000 people with zero serious complications. That's amazing. And I'll get on one of my points later as well. What about long-term? We don't have long-term data. We have short-term data, but the short-term data is incredible. It's efficacious and it's safe. Number 3, notwithstanding points number 1 and 2, I understand that you might be anxious. Like I understand that you will question this. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, this is crazy. Like, this disease is killing people. And early on, they said, it takes 10 years to develop a vaccine. Like, that's not really true, but it's going to take 10 years. Now, all of a sudden, 6 months later, we have one. Like, I get it that people are anxious, and it's totally okay. Which brings me to my 4th point. I want to validate people's concerns. It's okay to question this. It's okay to be anxious. Like that's human nature, is not to just run in and get injected with something because someone tells you should. It's okay. I want to validate people's concern.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I will say I was a hard no over the summer on the vaccine, purely on the rushing this to market.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Right. But in large part to your videos, I've really eased up on that, and I'm like, okay, I'm in.
I appreciate that feedback. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that because I feel like as a doctor and a scientist, I'm supposed to take a complicated topic, understand it, and teach it to people, and never want to force anything on people. But if it helps you come to that conclusion, that makes me happy. My point number 5 and 6 are tied closely together, and I'm talking to my own employees here. So not to America. I don't make all the decisions for the world, but no one in my practice will be forced to get the vaccine. I'm not going to say you have to have a vaccine to come to work. I don't think it's my position to make anyone do that. I think it's your personal choice. So no one's going to get forced to get vaccinated. And number 2, no one's going to get shamed into it. Like you can say, I'm not going to make you, but you're kind of dumb if you don't. Like I really don't believe that. I think every person should make their own decisions on this topic. And so points 5 and 6 for me is you're not going to be forced and you're not going to be shamed into do it. Which brings me to point 7. The science supports it. And I get it that you're afraid, but this is part of healthcare, and it has been for years and years and years, right? We talked about this last week, Austin. As doctors, sometimes we give people advice that's really scary. Like, right? Like, hey, we looked at your heart and these vessels aren't working. And so we're going to crack your chest open. We're going to open it up. We're going to stop your heart. We're going to put you on a machine that's going to give oxygen for your body. We're going to fix it. We're going to sew you back up and you're going to be fine. Trust me. Like, it's like, that's scary. That's crazy. Why would I ever do this? And it's because the data has shown that by doing this, we're going to save your life and you're going to live another 10 or 15 years and spend time with your kids. And our success is excellent, 99% success rate. And so even though it's scary, the right thing to do is let us crack your chest open and fix you. or right?
Yeah, that sounds scary.
It sounds scary, but we do it every single day, and people sign up for it because they know that the science supports it. Or how about this? You have cancer. We're going to take a drug. It's almost going to kill you. It's chemotherapy, and we're going to inject it into your body, and it's going to make your hair fall out, and you're going to vomit, and you're going to feel terrible, but it's going to kill the cancer, and it's not going to kill you. Trust us. We've done this before, and we're going to give you a chance to live, right? Like, that sounds really scary. And there are some people that just say, I don't want that. I'd rather die. And that's fine. That's your personal choice. But I'm telling you today that yes, this is scary, but the science supports it. This is the right thing to do. And we've trusted doctors for years and years and years. I think it's time to, trust the vaccine as well. Which brings me to point 8. I'm back to safety. A deeper dive, when you really look at the data, shows there's no bad side effects short term. And I just want to acknowledge we don't know long term. Everyone asks me, what about long term? What about long term? We don't know. Science doesn't have answers on long term, right?
Yeah.
Only once we get long term, we look back. And so we don't know long term, but there's no reason to believe that something bad's going to happen. If you really look at how messenger RNA works, we're only putting like a very small sequence of information inside of a fat bubble. It's called a lipid nanoparticle. And so we have to do that to stabilize it, because messenger RNA typically, it comes out of the cell and it goes over to a ribosome, and the ribosome like creates a protein. And as soon as it reads it and creates a protein, the messenger RNA disappears. It happens rapidly within seconds. And so this lipid nanoparticle is going to basically keep it stable long enough to make these little spike proteins of the virus. So I'm going kind of fast here, but the messenger RNA, the vaccine, all it does is produce just a little protein on the surface of the cell. You could never test positive. If you got vaccinated, you could never test positive because of the vaccine. It's never going to replicate in your body. All it's going to do is make a little spike protein. And so long term, could that little spike protein hurt you? Maybe, but there's no reason that we can understand or believe that a small little protein that's just on the surface of the cell could hurt you. And so we don't completely know long term. And whenever people ask me about it, I don't know, but there's no reason to believe that it's going to hurt you.
So other common vaccination, flu shots, MMR, are those mRNA vaccines, or what type?
No. So this is the first messenger RNA vaccine that's ever come to the world.
Oh, wow.
And so that's why people are anxious. So normally a vaccine's a lot scarier to me. Normally we take the virus and put the virus in your body, right?
Yeah.
And so we take a live virus, or we take an attenuated virus, which means like you might like cut out a portion that allows it to replicate, or you take a dead virus. That's pretty much been our options in the past. And so in the past, we would say, hey, I'm going to take this COVID virus. We're going to kill it, and I'm going to put it in your body. And you're like, well, that's scary, right?
Yeah.
That's not what's happening here.
Okay.
We're actually taking a genetic sequence of how the virus made the spike protein, and we're encoding it. I heard one epidemiologist describe it as you get an email to your immune system on how to fight this in the future if you ever see it, and then it's like Snapchat, it disappears. Like literally, it's like sending the genetic code. Hey, this is what the surface molecule, the surface protein looks like, and it disappears.
So if you talk more about that, all 20-year-olds will get this.
Right.
If you use a Snapchat analogy.
It's an email and it disappears. And that's it. We're not putting the virus in your body. We're sending an email to your immune system to tell you how to fight it if you ever see it in the future. And here's what's crazy. It freaking works.
Yeah.
95% success, meaning, and I'm not going to get into the whole study now, but there was a 95% reduction in cases in the group that got this vaccine. And so it's really, really cool technology. So point 9 is you're not going to have any serious side effects, but you might have side effects. It's such an important point that this is not just like a free lunch. You're getting injected with this technology, and it's got like this little nanoparticle, and that lipid vehicle is causing some people to react. So 10 to 15% of people have mild to moderate side effects. So it's pain at the site, muscle aches, fatigue, headache, and even fever. And so this weekend, if I get it and I have a fever, I'm not going to freak out. I don't have the virus. I'm getting a fever because my body's responding to the vehicle that they're putting it in my body with. So keep that in mind. Prepare yourself. And I think it's important as leaders and as doctors, we tell people what to expect. So 10 to 15% of people are going to have a response. And then my final point is it's okay to ask questions. Like questions. That's how we get to the answer. And I don't always know the answer, but I'll go look it up and try to help people find the answer. So do you have any questions about that?
I think you've answered them all pretty thoroughly. And I mean, really, my question was, should I get vaccinated?
Yeah.
Your answer is yes. Now, I'll probably be down the road just based on how they're rolling it out, right? But I guess that would be my question is, when could a non-healthcare worker, non-immunocompromised, young, relatively healthy person, when could I expect it to get access to the vaccine?
Probably 60 million people a month starting in January. So you can kind of do the math and see kind of where you land. And there's like charts and graphs, but probably April-ish is my guess.
Okay.
And I think because you're pretty healthy, you're going to be one of the last people to get it. And by, May or June, I think everyone wants to get vaccinated will have been vaccinated.
Okay, cool.
So I guess I'm going to maybe end this. Austin, I appreciate you helping me, ask questions. I think the interactive nature, we really got to some of these key points today, so I appreciate it. I think for my viewers, if you enjoyed this today, I'd encourage you to share it. I think a lot of people need to hear this message, which is, we got about 90 days left, really some of the darkest times, and our behavior can save lives. Like I go to work every day and think about how can I save one life? And right now, we have the opportunity over the next 90 days to save hundreds of thousands of lives just by getting vaccinated, by socially distancing, washing our hands, continue to wear a mask. So I encourage you guys to share this, and I thank you for watching. God bless you guys, and stay safe.